I saw Corey Feldman once, the green room. The thing about him is I don't know what he's going. He's just he's trying to be Michael Jackson.
He's trying to be Michael Jackson. Yeah,
it's just weird.
Not really succeeding.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Politics Unplugged, the podcast version. And as always happy to be joined by Chuck Coughlin to break down so many things. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know it's been a busy time in politics. We knew it was going to
happen this week. Really?
I know. Well, I mean, Chuck, we knew heading into this election cycle, every election year is going to be busy. But geez, this past month, with the stuff over, the abortion battles, and now we're going to see next week, and we'll talk about this. The legislature is going to refer some immigration abortion measure that the governor's already vetoed. Going to,
of course,
send that up to the ballot for the voters to chew on. But first of all, I just want to get your impressions of the past, this past month or this year, this session. I mean, it's been. Is there a way to put this kind of in historical context? I'm not dating you or us. We've been down there a long time. You've been down there for a while, and I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, the repetitive nature of it seems to be extraordinary, right? Yeah. It's like they keep hitting highs. Mm-hmm. It's like our last summer when we had, so many days in a row of 120 degree temperatures. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've gone through this historically. You have ASCAM that goes down, you have the Meekum impeachment trial that goes down, and you have these periods that you go through. You had 1070 with the drum banging outside. You have these periods that you go through, but then it reverts. Mm-hmm. It reverts to a normal. I don't see that happening anymore. I just see it, the volume and the antagonism and the contempt for the other side just keeps going up and up and up.
You boned me out, man. You're saying that this is the new normal? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, some people have ideas on how to change that, but I think that's what we should expect. That's as long as the system is the way it works right now, I think that's true. That's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit now about the immigration bill. The governor has signed the repeal of the law that
abortion.
The abortion repeal of the law that dates back to 1864. What kind of statement do you think Republicans made this week, and writ large down at the legislature? All but 4 Republicans down there voted to keep the near total ban of abortion law on the books and keep, what does that say?
It's reflective of Republican primary politics right now, because if you break that orthodoxy and you're in a competitive primary, you likely lose. On that issue. The nature of the election cycle today is it's orthodoxy. You break it high risk, high risk to your own political mortality if you break with orthodoxy. And it's 25, 30, it's 20% of Republicans showing up in a primary to vote. And that's that's the large. It's half the Republicans show up to vote, and then that's that core audience, and that's where their belief system is.
Yeah, but can't the case also be made that these Republicans? I'm just saying for them could be at least being consistent because they all ran on anti-abortion platforms.
Yeah,
I believe every Republican in the legislature right now got Kathy Harridan's Center for Arizona Policy's endorsement the last election cycle, and that is the top. Kathy is the top anti-abortion activist in Arizona, and that is the top anti-abortion organization in Arizona. So them voting to keep this, isn't that consistent with their views and what they campaigned on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you saw it after the first time then Gress's motion went down. You saw David Livingston and other people turning around to the gallery and cheering and clapping. You know, they were looking right at Kathy and her supporters because they were doing what they had been told to do, and they were supporting that constituency. I know it's a shock because, you know, broadly speaking, most of Arizona does not support that orthodoxy. And you probably find a vast majority of Arizonans supporting some reasonable choice that would preserve a woman's right to, or reproductive rights. But that's not how politics work. You know that. I mean, you've been around this. That's how this system works.
Yeah. And what does that say about the potential citizens initiative moving forward? You know, I would contend that that's still, you know, I don't think the repeal of the near total abortion ban takes much steam or any steam out of this, because the current 15-week ban still does not include any exceptions for rape or incest, and I think that's where the campaign focuses on.
The awareness of the initiative, and all of this drama, legal, court-wise and legislative-wise, says to that pro-reproductive rights community, I got to put this in the Constitution, because if it's not in the Constitution, it's vulnerable. And so I think it just continues to put more and more emphasis on letting voters decide for their right and for the rights of women in Arizona. Because anything short of putting it in the Constitution, you know, is not, it's not invulnerable.
Yeah, and they're going to use, I mean, if you go back and listen to comments from the Republicans on the floor, both in the Senate and the House, I would think that those would illustrate where a lot of folks are on this issue. And, you know, and they like the near total abortion ban. And so that's a strong argument for the Citizens Ballot Initiative to say, hey, look, protect us in the Constitution. Don't let lawmakers come back here and make changes.
And the contrary argument will be made at the ballot box, too, by Kathy and her supporters, that this is a unmitigated right to abort. All the way through a pregnancy. And they've written it that way with the intent of defending up to the hilt that this is not a decision that should be mitigated by any policymaker. This is between a woman and her doctor at any level. You know, and that is their orthodoxy. So you have these two completely opposite views of the world being expressed politically. I know that's a shock to everybody. And I believe that, you know, when I saw them when they drafted the initiative, I understood what they were doing. But, you know, it does make it somewhat politically vulnerable to all these questions on, you know, the 1% of the late-term abortions, partial birth abortions, all of these things where a woman may have an extraordinary problem and they go deal with it. Kathy's going to make hay with that during this cycle to emphasize the extreme nature of that right. I don't think it's going to work, because I think a majority of Arizonans are exhausted by this issue. You know, I don't want to get on my own soapbox here too much, but if you have a problem with abortion, the answer to that is to go to Planned Parenthood and ask women to pay women to have children and put them up for adoption. You know, do what Christ would have done. You know, sin is always going to be in the world. And so it's up to us to try and resolve that, to help people, to love people, to care for people. That is the Great Commission, love your enemy. And that's not what's going on here. It's finger pointing and judgment, and shocking that that's where we're at right now as a community.
And a couple of weeks ago, we got a leaked copy of some plan that in the House. It was an accidentally leaked a plan for Republicans, the legislature, to refer competing ballot measures this fall. in the idea that it would dilute the vote for the citizens ballot initiative.
Right.
Given what we've seen in the House and the Senate with the explanations on the floor, I don't think that Republicans could agree on anything or get enough votes to refer something
other
like
than
that.
the abortion, other than the outright ban.
Well, you would still be 2 votes short in each chamber to
Right.
get that done.
I understand that, but
That a majority of the Republican caucus at the legislature, the only thing that they could agree to refer would be refer the 1864 law back to the voters.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's no ideological room for compromise on the Republican side. There's certainly not on the Democratic side with with all of the energy behind the initiative. Why would you do that? There's no reason to do that. And so, no, I don't see. The minute I read that, I go, I don't know how Republicans are capable, because without any Democratic support, as you know, the magic numbers are 16-31. Yep. And I don't see 16 Republicans in the Senate or 31 Republicans in the House agreeing to any type of compromise.
But one thing they will be able to agree upon is what I'm predicting is this thing they're talking about doing this coming week, and that is referring a get tough on the border immigration measure that Governor Katie Hobbs has already vetoed this year.
Right.
They're going to ostensibly do this on Wednesday, and the plan is to make it a state crime to enter illegally into Arizona. That would allow local law enforcement to enforce immigration law. That's highly controversial. It sounds a whole lot like 1070,
yeah,
which did not do well in the courts.
Well, and I think this is mirrored after the Texas policy on SB 4, which I think is part of the idea of hoping that another Supreme Court, because this is a different Supreme Court than that was there before, and could you get a majority of the court to agree with this? Mm-hmm. Can you make a decision that says that the enforcement of federal immigration policy is not the sole propriety of the federal government? That's what this issue will challenge. I believe politically it's not a bad idea for them to do, because right now they are facing a stiff headwind with the attention around the reproductive rights initiative, which, as we've just gotten done discussing here, does not end well with Republicans.
No.
You know, I think we both agree that there's a majority of the electorate that will support the initiative, and it will drive turnout. It'll characterize turnout in the cycle, because, you know, the one thing you look at when you're running an election is, well, what motivates somebody to go vote? You know, if you have a candidate talking about abortion or a candidate talking about immigration, that's one thing. If you're putting a law on the ballot that says you vote for this, X happens, that's direct democracy. That's what drives actual turnout. And I think that is the motivator on the reproductive rights side. It says you can address this right here, right now. So the Republicans' response to that on another highly volatile issue will be to put immigration on the ballot so as to tell voters, you want to do something? This is what you can do right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. Who benefits more? I mean, what issue drives voters to the polls more? Because I would think abortion would, because it's a much more personal, emotional issue.
Yeah.
I tend to think of immigration and, you know, come at me, bro, you know, if you want to. It's almost statistics. Because you read these numbers, and they're bad numbers.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Tucson sector's the number one sector right now.
The numbers are terrible, but, like, you know, how many people have actual interactions with people who are here illegally on a day-to-day basis? And if those interactions, are they overwhelmingly negative? So
we could debate that. We could debate which one is going to drive the electorate more, but that's a matter of awareness.
No.
That becomes a matter of awareness. So putting it on the ballot is one thing. Campaigning for it is another thing. Mm-hmm. We all know that abortion is going to be on the ballot. Mm-hmm. Reproductive rights is on the ballot. We've been talking about this for months. It has been the narrative of the cycle. I don't see that changing. I think everybody is aware that this is going to be on the ballot. Whereas this effort has not got a lot of attention. And then the question, as a campaign veteran of running campaigns, where's the dough come from, brother? Who's going to run the campaign? Who's going to put a fire under this thing? Because the business community, as is my understanding, I believe that Mr. Seiden in the chamber is very leery about creating another 1070 environment around the state's economy, and they're reluctant to give full-throated support to any of this because they realize it could damage the state's economy.
Well, because the underlying bill, because it's a little wonky here, because the idea is to strike this language, to put this language on an amendment to an existing bill that Toma already has, which is a E-Verify.
Yeah.
And I know the chamber was very much against that bill.
Right.
And the E-Verify system to check immigration stats for anybody who receives a public benefit from state, local, whatever government. You have to verify you're in the country legally. Right. And I know very much that
it's a good system. I mean, that's
the E-Verify.
Yeah. Russell Pierce, that goes all the way back to then. I mean, we were the leading state in advocating for that. And I would argue that from a policy perspective, Ben's usually a fairly wonky policy guy. From a policy perspective, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. You know, to lock up the business community from an employment, preventing illegal immigrants from being employed. That's a significant measure. Whereas this seems to be, I mean, we'll read more about it when we see it, but a strictly law enforcement thing. If you're here illegally, then they have a right to arrest you. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you got a busted taillight? Does that mean you're speeding? Does that mean that, you're jaywalking? Does that mean it's a minor in possession? I don't know any of that. That will be the subject of the ACLU and the opposition to this, probably suggesting that this is going to be litigated and it's going to be a problem.
Well, and it goes back to one of the original questions with 1070, which I know you were very familiar with, having been the former advisor for Governor Chamber who signed the bill, comes to a point like, what's an illegal immigrant look like?
Right. Well, and then we know if Joe Arpaio, we know if you're Joe Arpaio what you did. Yeah. You started having roundups. No. And is that likely to happen in enforcement? So let's say you have a public protest. Huh. You have a public protest on some immigrant rights or Palestinian or Gaza or something. Do cops just start asking people for ID? I mean, they can, they can do that in a situation. So, what does that mean, and who's going to take advantage of that, and how does that happen? It does address the underlying stress that's in the community. I look at Arizona as probably the most sophisticated electorate in the country of navigating these issues. Because we've been through it, Dennis. This has gone on for over 20 years. We had Flake and McCain trying to do the compromise in the Senate. We've had a lot of attention on this issue, and so the question becomes, what's the fire back? And there will be opposition to this. There clearly will be opposition to this on the ballot to create that doomsday scenario. And then on the flip side, back to my campaign, put my campaign ad. Where's the dough come from, brother? Where are you raising money to amplify your concerns? And whose narrative wins come election day on that? I don't know. I think I can tell you honestly whose narrative is going to win on the reproductive rights one. Sure. I'm not clear about this.
Because Arizona's a lot different than it was when 1070 passed.
It is a lot different.
A lot different.
Yes.
And I also thought, too, when 1070 passed, remember it had 70% public support initially after its passed.
I remember that very clearly.
And people tend to forget that. But I also remember the other side, Democrats didn't put up any real arguments as to why 1070 shouldn't be the law.
No.
So there was really no real opposition. Nope. That is different now. There will be, like you're saying, there will be opposition.
You have a very sophisticated community. Labor is heavily involved in that. education advocates are publicly involved in that. Public health advocates are engaged on that. There's a giant piece of the community that has now been activated on these issues, and they will play. And so
the chambers, as you mentioned.
My guess, I don't think we're going to hear from the business community on this issue. We heard they weren't there on 1070 either. They didn't really see it coming. It was like a giant train on the tracks, but they didn't see it coming. And the
they didn't want to see
industry,
it. They didn't want to see it coming.
Right, and that was one of Jan's complaints.
Yeah.
They all called her to veto, and none of them testified. None of them showed up in committee. I mean, I don't. Is there going to be public testimony on this down there? That's an interesting question. I don't think there is. I think they're bringing this to the floor just the way they brought the immigration or the reproductive rights. So I don't think there's going to be an affordable opportunity here for the opposition of this to manifest itself down there.
Now I hear it's going to be heard in committee on Wednesday.
Okay. All right.
So can the opposition rally the troops? Because this is happening quick.
Yeah.
This is all happening pretty
I say
quick.
they will. I say you will hear horns and drums, and you will see a spectacle going on if they permit a committee.
So you're saying a change of pace next week? It'll slow down.
Exactly. You should go on a vacation. That's really what you need to do. You need
man.
2-week vacation. They come down once a week. Can't you just show up once a week?
I'll talk to my bosses. Can we just do a 1-day work week?
Yeah.
I think
perfect.
And Colin over there too. He could use a 1-day work week as well for a little while.
Beautiful.
I think.
I like that. But you join the Bernie Sanders movement for the 32-hour work week. Maybe this is an underhanded way of the legislature endorsing Bernie Sanders
32-hour work. That sounds very French to me. Yeah. I'm skeptical.
Oh God.
Would be remiss. Wasn't planning to get into this, but would be remiss since you're a veteran down there. Nerves are super raw down there.
Yeah.
These debates, particularly on the abortion, got very personal.
Oh.
Obviously. Now you've got to head in and get a budget done.
Yeah.
Talk to me and tell our viewers a little bit about how personality plays out in situations like this and emotions. How do you put these? Can they put their battle axes down?
Yeah.
And then go work on a budget?
Well, the first thing that I've been looking for, and I haven't seen it, is are they going to remove Mr. Shope from his pro tem position? Are they going to remove Miss Bollock from her Judiciary Committee chairmanship? I haven't seen that. That may happen next week, and it may not. If it doesn't happen, I think it's probably thoughtful on Mr. Peterson's side to try and. Because it's only 16, brother. You don't have a lot of room in the room. And
you can't go pissing off too many people.
Right, right. And so that's the first thing that I would be looking for.
Because in the House, Toma did remove Matt Grass
from the Appropriations Committee,
which is like one of the only committees working right now.
That's correct. What I gather on the budget from people I've spoken to is that Mr. Peterson and Mr. Toma are in lock. That they believe there's a budget solution here that can delay some spending for 2 years, push some of that existing spending back, claw back some of it, not a lot of it, but claw back some of it.
That one-time money in those projects from last year they doled out?
Maybe claw back some of that, but push a lot of that out for 2 years.
Okay.
Because the
we're talking
projections.
About a lot of those road projects that were
a lot of those, the projections, the JLBC projections for revenue improved substantially in about 2 years from now, where they are projecting more of a surplus. So as long as they don't go down next year and spend a ton of money too, they should be able to push this back. And so that, I believe, is on the table. I'm not sure that the governor's office has locked arms with their Democratic minority leaders and that they have a plan that they want to pursue. Because that should be the governor's marching orders is, what do the minority leader and the minority whips and the caucuses want out of this scenario? Would they be happy with pushing things back a couple years and walking away from, and instead of making a debacle? I think that's why people like Mr. Toma have said that they think they can be out by Memorial Day. I think you and I look at each other and go, really? Is that really going to happen? I didn't put my money on that, on the sine die. And then, of course, there's all this discussion about not adjourning at all. Not adjourning the session, like just staying in session like they did last year, as a protective measure against the governor and keeping her on her toes the whole time. Because we know every governor, whether it's Republican or Democrat, you want those people to go home.
Yeah.
and say,
and again, of course,
here.
we were remiss not to mention right now the forecast for the state. We're looking at $billion deficits at this point.
Yes.
So there's
like split between the next 2 years. It's about $1 billion deficit.
Yeah, and the governor
That's
said,
I think it's closely, isn't an $18 billion budget or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's not bad. I mean, that's not a ton of money.
No.
When you're
remember, now we're dating ourselves.
Don't do it to me.
Because I remember when $1 billion was big money.
Well, I remember in 2009 when my girl Jan inherited the budget. It was a $10 billion budget, and there was $3 billion missing. So there was 30% of the budget was not there. That was that sucked the air out of the room.
Yeah,
that was a problem.
I've forgotten that year.
Oh, believe me.
No, I've actively tried to forget that year because it was long.
Yeah, she was very fond of you. I know that. Jerking, asking her questions as she's walking away. That was not her forte either. But
extemporaneous speaking.
Yeah, it was always enjoyable to watch your engagements.
Yeah,
something I know she looked forward to.
I miss those days. I think we'll end it there. Always a great conversation, man, and I appreciate you coming down here and talking to us a little bit about that. And
happy to oblige. It's always, and I could be 100% wrong. So send all negative comments to Dennis at the website. If you do not like or nothing I said comes true, just blame Dennis.
Final question for you, man. I mean, I'm thinking we're getting down to the end of the great weather here in Phoenix. On Sunday, I think might be the last day for porch beers at some bar somewhere.
I like that idea.
So I'm going to ask you, where's the best place to have a porch beer?
Wow. That's a very interesting question.
In Arizona.
All of Arizona.
I mean, you've got Bisbee. I
got my Bisbee hangouts. I do.
Unless you want to go
you
Phoenix.
Got the Desert Bar in Parker.
Yeah.
That's a spot. Yeah. In my own little hood around the Arcadia area. I like Oso. I like back by the canal back there. That's a very handy little cool spot with the fans going and the dogs. There's lots of dogs around. So I think that's the beauty about our state. There's so many good watering holes because it's a dry heat.
Porch beers.
We need to stay hydrated.
And I call this time of season and then late fall porch beer weather, baby.
All right.
And my favorite place.
Tell me where we're going.
Is the nearest porch beer bar with a porch.
Yeah.
To me, wherever I'm at the time.
There's a bar right down the street called the Porch, as we know, in Arcadia. So that could be a hangout.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thanks, Dennis.
Bye. And welcome back, everybody. Joined by Colin, as always, here to wrap up this show. Welcome, Colin. It's been another long week, man. Can we just get something nice and easy?
We're saying that every week now.
I know. Something nice.
It's like week 4 of, man, this is a really long week.
And next week, it's going to be intense too. You're going to have that stuff down, what have you, down at the legislature.
Immigration palooza on Wednesday instead of the abortion debate we've had for the last 3 or 4 Wednesdays on their big one-day work week.
Oh man,
can we
like just wrap up with I don't know. We watched the CD8 debate together.
We did.
It was interesting.
It was interesting. Yes,
that was an interesting debate. And CD8 is the one in the West Valley. It's that's open now because Debbie Lesko said that she's going to step down at the end of her term, at the end of this year. And the winner of that primary race for Congress will likely be the next congressman from Arizona. We can say congressman because there's no women running in that primary. But because the district leans so heavily Republican, and you've got Trent Franks.
Yes.
Signed in scandal a few years ago. Google it.
Yes.
You got,
it's a story. Yeah.
It's a story. Abe Hamaday.
Yeah.
Blake Masters, which we, at least when this race started, they didn't live in the district.
No.
They may have moved there.
Yeah.
We don't know. You've got Anthony Kern, who was indicted last week.
Yeah.
For his role in the so-called fake elector scheme.
Yeah.
And Ben Toma, Speaker of the House, actually lives in the district and
has Debbie Lesko's endorsement.
Which
is worth something.
Yeah. Well, but Abe Hamaday has
Trump's
endorsement.
Arguably worth more.
But Anthony Kern was endorsed by Donald Trump in a different race 2 years ago.
Yes.
So was Blake Masters for the Senate?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting crew.
It's the first time I've watched a debate where someone boasted that they're young and full of testosterone. I've never seen that in a debate. I am inclined to suggest that if you're saying that you're young and full of testosterone, you're probably not making the argument you're trying to make. You just sound odd.
Mm-hmm. It sounds strange. Also, I found it interesting too that with Trent Franks apologizing for that scandal. For those who didn't Google it yet, he stepped down. He offered, according to the AP, according to reporting, he offered.
I think not really disputed by Trent Franks.
No, I think he offered 2 female staffers at different points. Cash money or whatever, if they would help him father another child.
Yes.
He apologized and said it was inappropriate.
Yeah.
Good
apology, but
yeah. And then I was also struck. The other thing that stuck out for it was like the House Speaker Ben Toma didn't speak much.
No, he was pretty quiet.
Oh.
His answers were short. There were times when I think they skipped over him at least once.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is a format that he's all that. I don't know that it fits him well. He's not really a fire and brimstone guy.
No, and I think you kind of need that in a race like this, right? It's all about that.
Yeah.
About being as outrageous as possible.
Yes. He was kind of starving for oxygen there in a room with the other 4.
Yeah. And so I kind of walked out of that debate, and I think it's as wide open as ever now, because you get these big primaries, and I mean 25% is going to win you the primary.
Yeah.
And I just think Trent Franks, he first won his race to Congress back in the day and was a big crowded primary just like this one.
Yeah.
Nobody gave him a chance back in the day. He came out, he won, surprised everybody, and he was there until he stepped down amid that scandal. I think some of the same dynamics, at least the size of the field, is playing out here. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think you've got the really well-known name qualities, at least statewide, with Masters and Hamaday.
Yeah.
They were, near the top of the ticket. 2 years ago. So people know who they are. Toma has represented the area for a long time. Actually, he lives there. People know who he is.
Yeah.
Anthony Kern, he lives in the district. If they didn't know him before, they probably know him now as part of the, fake elector plot.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. I really don't have a sense of how this is all going to play out.
And it's hard. I mean, so many of them have what would be in a general election negatives they would have to overcome. And I'm not sure how negative those are in the key race for them, which is the primary, because whoever it is almost assuredly wins the general. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people remember the Trent Franks thing. I don't know that the fact that Abe Hamaday is still fighting in court over the 2022 election.
Still hasn't acknowledged that he lost the 2022 race to Chris Mays by 280 votes.
Yeah, it was close, but he lost.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is suggested otherwise,
Nope.
except for his bevy of lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Kern's got a variety of odd stuff that will work against him. But again, I don't know how much it works against him photos of him at the Capitol on January 6th would probably work against him in the general.
Yeah.
Do they help him in the primary?
Maybe.
They might. I don't know.
I wish I had some great hot take to tell you, this, that, or the other thing. But, I walked out of that, I came out of that debate going, I have no idea.
No. And not that
because they all agreed on pretty much everything.
Yeah. Mostly that Trump is king. And if, what would you do to fix inflation? I would support Donald Trump.
Yeah,
that was the answer.
And it's a good answer in that district.
Yeah,
in that race.
Have you seen polling? Not that I necessarily put that much weight in polling at this stage.
There's been some polling out there, but I'm not putting any weight into any polling.
We were reminded on the floor, were we not, that Kern is polling at 3%. But again, I haven't seen the general numbers, and that was before.
And you're referring to the abortion debate in the Senate, where a Democratic senator stood up and said, "Well, I'm not running for Congress and polling at 3%."
Yeah.
However,
yes,
yeah. So I don't know, man. I wish I had a hot take for everyone out there. Had some insight into telling you what I think is going to happen, but
no clue.
I would not be surprised to be surprised at the result of who comes out of this.
No. My one guess is I think Trent Franks does better than people would anticipate after resigning the position just 7 years ago.
Yeah.
In a somewhat embarrassing fashion.
Yeah. So let's move on. Let's get away from politics a little bit. I know that some of the regular listeners really kind of enjoy this, and this might be the final week for us to really talk about the Suns for a little while. Yeah. And at least this week, our predictions, we don't have to worry about getting them wrong, at least when it comes to games, because they've done so.
Okay, they're done. The only question now is, does Frank Vogel get fired in the next few hours to beat the time? Because we're at about noon, 1 o'clock on a Friday. Mm-hmm. So it's a Friday exit, or he's, we'll see on Sunday when this drops. My guess is,
Do you think he gets fired?
He's got to get fired. He's got to get fired. Okay. And I don't know why you'd let it go to next week. I think they do it by the end of the day today. But who knows? I can't explain why he's still there.
Yeah, no, I can't either. I found that press conference on Wednesday with him, when I went back to review that, it was like, I've only seen clips, it was like just bizarre with Ishbia, the owner.
Yeah. I mean, suggesting that there are 26 GMs, I think he said, who would trade places with the Suns right now.
Oh, God, no.
There are not. No, there are not.
No.
There are not.
No. We're not the only ones that feel this way. It was really, man, it was brutal to watch this team.
Yes.
It was not fun.
It was not a fun team to watch at all. All that offensive firepower, and they were a slog to watch for much of the season. And the thing with Vogel, to me, comes down to, I don't know that he's absolutely the problem here, but he sure as hell doesn't seem to be the solution, because they were awful and he had a year to coach them. And they don't appear to be running an offense at any time.
And they don't appear to be listening to him. There's some reports.
Yeah. Either he's not coaching them or they're not listening to him. And either way, it doesn't bode well for his continued employment. And there were suggestions that after they had a key game against the Clippers where they just got pasted from the start. It was 35-4 at one point, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was a really, really key game for them to try and make it into the playoffs and not deal with the play-in. Mm-hmm. And he yelled at them afterwards for their complete lack of interest. And the players apparently were trying to keep from laughing at him. And they asked Booker after that game what his mindset was after that embarrassing performance. And his answer was chilling.
Be like me if I tried to yell at you. You'd be like, come on.
So, I would think by the time this drops, there's an opening. And if not, there's going to be one next week, because I cannot fathom. You can't do anything with the team. They're with the roster. Yep. They're locked in. Mm-hmm. They've got, any changes are very small around the periphery of it. Yeah. And you can't run this back next year. You can't look at this and say, well, I think it just needs another year.
So how's your ball handling skills? How's your handle? Because they're looking for a point guard on the cheap. I meuld play for the league minimum.
Well, good, because that's what they can afford to pay you.
Yeah, the league minimums. What is the league minimum in the NBA these days?
It depends on years of service and all that. I'm not positive. It's a few 100,000. Yeah, I'd do it.
Yeah, I'd do it. At least the home games. I wouldn't want to travel.
Nah, I mean some here and there.
Some places
play the Lakers, sure. Portland's fine.
Yeah.
Spend
a weekend in New York, maybe.
Yeah, I'll skip the Detroit trip. Cleveland.
Anything in Texas?
Yeah, I don't need to do that. No.
No. So, and let's end with this. The Bee Guy, Diamondbacks. I really don't want to go back and explain everything, but apparently a game was delayed. Diamondbacks game was delayed this past week because bees decided to swarm behind home plate. They called in pest control guy. To come in and take care of business. He took care of business, and now he's kind of like this hero.
It was cute, and like having him throw out the first pitch when he did the dramatic throwing back of the bee suit hood and all that. That was all cool. I think we're done.
I was going to say, is this 15 minutes up?
I would think so, and yet they're still doing the enter Believed for a half off tickets. And like, I think I'm done. It was fine. It was cool. He handled it well. He got rid of the bees.
I just kept thinking, because I'm from a place called Burlington, Iowa. And there was a double-A baseball team back there. I think they're single-A now. And their name is the Burlington Bees.
Yeah.
And
I think Salt Lake's team is now the Bees. I think.
Yeah, don't get me started on Salt Lake.
Yeah.
They took our precious hockey team. Oh, wait a minute.
Salt Lake, I believe, the minor league, the AAA affiliate of the Angels, I believe, still. Which is, I can't imagine they've been doing all that well. As an Angel fan, I think if you're not good enough to actually play for the big league team, then your future may not be great.
All right, man. It's been a long week, and I'll ask you the same question I asked Chuck. Maybe tells you where my mind's at here on a Friday after a long week. Where's the best place in Arizona to get yourself a porch beer?
See, I'm not a beer guy.
Cocktail.
Yeah, Sedona. Nice patio place in Sedona. That's where I go.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, enjoy the view.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. I'm a big margarita at this restaurant I like in Laguna Beach. That's right on the water. That's about perfect.
Yeah, it sounds so good.
Yeah.
So I think we should wrap that up to make some of this stuff kind of a reality in my life.
That sounds good.
Wrap this up and head off to wrap up work and head off to the porch
if
somewhere.
Anyone drives by the station and sees you out holding a beer out on the front, they know why. They know why. I'm sure management would be fine with Dennis having the Arizona's family porch beer.
They might have a problem with that. You go do that someplace else.
Yeah. Say, Dennis, can I see you in the office for a sec?
Oh, man. It's been a long week. It's been a long month.
Yep. I'm sure it's going to get much better, though, as we get closer to November.
Should slow down by then, I think.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. That's all I got to say this week.
Yep. See you next week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.